Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Michigan race review. This will be a review of the NASCAR Cup Series race. It was the Firekeepers Casino 400, held at Michigan International Speedway. And just to start off, what an amazing track. You know, even with the shortcomings of the next-gen car, Michigan still puts on fantastic races. And all it makes me think of is how much I'm going to miss Auto Club. You know, especially with how the next-gen car has been racing, Auto Club would have been a fantastic place to go. Let's hope they bring back Chicagoland. We've seen some movement there, so perhaps Chicagoland could be coming back after the Chicago Street Race contract ends. And another thing of note, the Prime coverage has been fantastic so far. Having Carl, Dale Jr., Steve Letarte, Adam Alexander, Daniel Trotta, just a fantastic team all around. Corey LaJoie's there, so it really builds to a premium form of presentation. On top of already having 1080p, 60 frames per second, that's something that Fox usually doesn't do. I know they've broadcasted a few races in 4K, but that's not their standard. The hour of pre-race coverage really sets the tone for the race, and especially for casual viewers or people that, you know, just kind of absentmindedly watch, it really clues them in on what's been going on, the dynamics of the race, why it's important that these two cars are on track next to each other, why it's important that somebody's running well or poor that day. Some more big news. Ram is coming back to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, so welcome back. I believe they've been out of the sport since 2012, so that should be interesting. The secret wasn't very well kept. It had been leaked time and time again. You know, it wasn't the same maybe big moment they were looking for, but welcome back, Ram. Hopefully that venture works out well for Stellantis. Another thing of note is Carson Hocevar and Ricky Stenhouse, and how they were going to interact after their run-in last week, after Hocevar kind of wiped out Ricky Stenhouse. Not even kind of, I mean, he did. Apparently they had a pleasant conversation. Stenhouse really addressed the elephant in the room, and that is Carson's driving habits. And from what we were told, Stenhouse told him, you have the pace and the speed to really go out there and get a win, so you don't have to be driving like a bull in a China shop. He also iterated to Carson Hocevar. A lot of other guys in the Cup Series garage texted me and said, hey, you should have waited for him after the race and clocked him. You know, classic Ricky Stenhouse, but it seems they didn't get what they wanted, and they handled things pretty well. The funny thing is, and hopefully I'll put the image in here, Carson Hocevar and Ricky Stenhouse, those two teams, they had to share a garage stall this weekend. So, strange bedfellows, you know, you never know who you're going to be working alongside, so it's best to run clean when you can. So just jumping into the race, in Stage 1, Byron started off pretty hot. He ended up taking the lead, I believe, on around lap 12. Held it for a little bit, and it just shows the same pace that the 24 team has had. And that brings up a few other questions with the other Hendrick Motorsports teammates. What happened to their speed? Different guys reacted differently to the track temperature and the surface. During their little bit of practice and qualifying, the track was very cool. They had their setups different, and so going into the race when it was a lot hotter, a lot of the teams just missed the mark. Eventually, Chris Buescher would go on to take Stage 1. You know, that's a big deal for a Ford team to perform well at this track at Michigan, because, you know, Detroit being their home. So it's always a big deal for Ford to go out there and perform well. It's a big deal for the Chevy teams to go out there and perform well, and then you have Toyota doing their own thing. Kicking off Stage 2, lap 67, the 41, the 99, and the 2, along with the 48, end up getting into a giant wreck, bringing out a red flag. Alex Bowman absolutely obliterated the wall. You know, thank goodness for the safer barrier for the Hans device, for whatever improvements they've made to the next-gen car since it came out. But even with that, Bowman still said it was one of the hardest hits he's ever taken. So, you know, he's already had several big hits in his career. Several that have sidelined him. So hopefully we don't see a repeat of what happened with Dale Jr., you know, the concussions catching up, that becoming an issue. And it's been a very rough 2 months for Alex Bowman. He went from 5th in the points. Now he's right around the cut line. He started the race 45 plus. The last time I saw the standings, he was down 16. We'll check the standings in a bit. But the red flag really was for, I guess, to take care of Alex Bowman, because the rest of the field continued for the most part. I believe Custer was out as well. What really kicked all of that off is they went 4 wide, and Cindric just made slight contact, And these next-gen cars drive so much on the edge that once you really lose the downforce or you lose the nose, it's almost impossible to recover the car. And some of that was really noted when they first adopted this next-gen car, going from the traditional steering to their new steering and just several of the other changes, specifically the tire itself being a lot wider, but also smaller because the wheel is larger. So there's less rubber on the track, so it increases the difficulty. There's not as much of a forgiveness with the slip angle. Lap 72, so right after they get back to green flag, John Hunter Nemechek brings out the yellow. And one thing with the yellows, they really need to try to speed up the cycle of the yellow or the caution flag, because the stage breaks already take forever. And when you're at the track, that is just such a dead time, especially a longer track like a Michigan, a Talladega, or even like a road course. It's ridiculous. So they can't necessarily shorten the length of the caution for accident when they have cleanup and whatever they may need to do, but they definitely need to look at shortening the stage breaks. A little later in stage 2, lap 109, Blaney spins, brings out the yellow, and that was just another single car spin, and it's another one of these instances of this next-gen car is hard to recover. Once you lose, your handling, once it goes away, there's not an easy way to recover. William Byron ends up taking stage 2, so William Byron, again, just running well, and it sets up a heartbreaking loss towards the end. We'll talk about that. Ty Dillon and Larson ended up getting into it a little bit. Larson was running mid to a higher line and came up the track and ended up not necessarily hitting Ty Dillon on the wall. They never made contact, but Ty Dillon got tight and ended up scraping the wall. Once the yellow came out, those two had a little incident. Ty Dillon showed his displeasure. And, he was run really tight, but a conversation needs to be had. Ty Dillon's been running pretty well. Ty Dillon may just be the better Dillon brother, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion. So why isn't he running for RCR? Why isn't he in the 3, over Austin? And from what I've heard, it's just Ty wants to try to do it more on his own instead of being the silver spoon child. But it's good to see him running well. Another thing to address is there's a great crowd at the track. It makes a huge difference when a track goes from 2 dates to 1 date, because it makes that date mean much more to the people that would be in commuting distance to the track. If Talladega has 2 dates, so if I miss the spring date for whatever reason, I always know I can hit it in the fall. Or if I hit it in the spring, there's not as much pressure to go in the fall. But if that's your home track and there's 1 date, people are going to show up, and it showed. The stands look packed, and even yesterday for the Truck Series race, the stands look pretty packed. So that's really good to see Michigan out there having a decent-sized crowd. Not as many stands as there are in the gameplay you're seeing, but still, it was a good showing. Carson Hocevar, speaking of Carson Hocevar, we mentioned him a little earlier in regards to the Ricky Stenhouse situation, all that. He was running very well in today's race. It was good to see him back up there, really kind of take what happened with Stenhouse on the chin and move past it, and he didn't get into trouble, so that was good. And he even goes on to take the lead in stage 3, but we're told Carson Hocevar is short on fuel. With the lead, you do kind of dictate the pace of the race, but you don't get that draft, you don't get the tow, so you're not able to save as much fuel. So there's some difficulty there. And Carson Hocevar just ran the wheels off of it. They were hoping for a caution. It never fell. And eventually Carson Hocevar blows a left rear. So he ends up making it back to pit road, but it just took him out of contention. Sad to see, and Carson Hocevar currently is below the cut line. But with all these good runs, maybe he can come back, put something together, and perhaps make a run at the playoff. The RFK cars, they looked good at certain spots. At the end of stage 3, we're about to get here, but Christopher Buescher, or Chris Buescher, made a run at it. His car looked fantastic. Ryan Preece's car looked fantastic. Keselowski, I'm just talking visually, looked fantastic. The RFK cars, their designer, they're doing a great job. They know what they're doing at RFK when it comes to the branding and design of their cars. They pop on track, the metallic numbers and sometimes metallic elements to the designs. it looks fantastic. So good to see them running well at certain points. Keselowski had his moments where he was out there performing well, so that was good. Reddick got blocked during his pit stop. He drove it in too deep, and actually, we just mentioned Keselowski. Keselowski was the one blocking him in. It wasn't Keselowski's fault. Tyler Reddick just drove it in too far, so that ends up costing Tyler Reddick a ton of positions. Coming off of pit road, it was extremely crowded. I mean, they were 3 and 4 wide on pit road. So Hamlin and Gibbs, they made slight contact on a very crowded pit road. So on the final restart, Hocevar was the first car with 2 tires. Or no, he was the first car with 4 tires. There we go. But like we said earlier, they were short on fuel. That's how they assumed that lead. Byron actually lost a few positions, and it ends up setting up this final run. Hocevar grabs the lead, and he doesn't pull away. I mean, that just with how draggy the car is and the tow these guys can get, pulling away really wasn't an option in today's race. But Byron ends up making an aggressive pass past Larson. Larson kind of loses the nose behind Hocevar, so those things kind of worked in tandem. Larson back to third. So we have Hocevar, Byron, Larson. And they log several laps, and we're watching this burn bar. Prime has this burn bar. It's pretty interesting. It's a new element they've added to their coverage. And it really informs the viewer, on when races are coming down to fuel. Part of that I like. It informs the viewers, especially the casuals, on what's going on. But it also removes a little bit of the mystery element. Oh, how much are these guys saving? Are they going to make it? Will they, won't they? And it was really shaping up to be more of a fuel-type race. And waiting in the wings, back behind everybody, in 5th place at the time, they showed Denny Hamlin. His burn bar looked incredible. He was only burning, 4.5 around that. We'll throw the image up. He was burning less than the leader. He was burning less than William Byron in 2nd. So he was, taking care of his stuff. So fuel suddenly became a huge talking point towards the end of this race. Even though there was close racing, fuel was still involved. So overall, very entertaining final stage. With 19 to go, I believe it was 19 to go, that's when Hocevar had his flat. So Byron assumes the lead, and then we have Denny Hamlin closing in for the last, 15 or so laps. And we see more of the aero battles. Hamlin clearly had the faster car towards the end. He had the fuel, so he was able to push. And anytime he would get a good run on Byron, all it took was one corner of Byron aero blocking, and Denny Hamlin suddenly loses 2/10. And they repeated this process several times. It was a little frustrating to see, but it wasn't as bad as previous weeks. Just Michigan raced well. It's a plenty wide track, plenty of grooves, so it ends up working out. Byron looked like his car wasn't handling the best towards the end, but it's heartbreaking to see Hamlin take this win away from Byron, especially with how good Byron was all day. Hamlin gets out. He states, "Hey, I beat your favorite driver." He's really trying to play that heel role, trying to be the villain, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan of Hamlin, and it would make sense that the first race I try to do a race recap on would be when Denny Hamlin steals it. But I'm also proud of Denny Hamlin for taking this win. A lot of drivers fall off, especially after their 700th start. Hamlin has over 700 starts now, and he just took a win, so good for him. He's still closing out these races. It's his 3rd win of the year, tying Kyle Larson for most wins. Byron, even with how well he's been running, only the 1 victory. So that's rough. They need more consistency. William Byron did end up running out of fuel towards the end of the race. I believe it was the 2nd to last lap. He had to come down pit road. So William Byron ends up finishing 28th. He did have the fastest lap of the race, so he does get that 1 bonus point. Overall, good race for William Byron. Just a very disappointing ending. And another thing to talk about is how unequal the Hendrick cars look right now. You have Byron up here just killing it every week. Kyle Larson, he already has the 3 wins, but they've been wildly inconsistent lately. It just looks like their cars aren't handling well. They don't have the most speed. They're getting mired back in traffic. And Elliott, even though he's up there in the point standings, he's not doing too well overall. He never really showed this raw pace during the race. And Bowman has just fallen off the last 2 months, and that's, from 5th to points down almost to the cut line. That's just hard to see and hard to understand. As a multi-car team, you would hope they would be sharing a lot of their information and ensuring all the cars can run well. But, I mean, sometimes these multi-car organizations, they end up running tests, and they try to work out new setups, new cheats, and things. So perhaps right now, Elliott is the test car. Maybe Bowman is the test car. I don't know. It's just hard to explain the lack of parity among the Hendrick drivers right now. So hopefully they can find that. Hendrick has a decent track record of falling off over the summer. They have a very dry summer stretch. They'll start off maybe strong, and then in the season strong. We'll see if they can really bring it back, especially Bowman. He's getting very close to that cut line. Let's take a look at the standings. William Byron leads the standings, Kyle Larson at second. Denny Hamlin moves up to third, Christopher Bell down to fourth. Chase Elliott's still at fifth, and then we'll just pick out a few specific ones. Ross Chastain in eighth. That's impressive for how he's running. Bob Wallace in 10th. We have our first RFK car and Chris Buescher in 12th. In 15th, right above the cut line, Kyle Busch and Alex Bowman down to 13th. It's getting close. I don't know if these are the updated standings. Well, yes, these would be the updated standings. Denny's tracking with 3 wins. So let's look right at the cut line. We have Austin Cindric. He lost 3 positions during today's race, 3 standings positions. It looks like he's only 11 above the cut line. That's Josh Berry in 17th. Carson Hocevar, he dropped a position. It was really hard to see if that was a -1 or a -4, but he is under the cut line, so he's going to have some work to do. AJ Allmendinger down in 19th. Ricky Stenhouse dropping again. He's down to 20th. So the battle for the cut line is really tight. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially if we can get another spoiler winner. And then let's look at the overall race results. I would have liked to look at this, but so we have Denny Hamlin taking it, Chris Buescher in second, Ty Gibbs third, Bubba Wallace fourth, Kyle Larson fifth, Ross Chastain sixth. Another strong run for him. So they definitely have some momentum going. Zane Smith, impressive running in 7th. Kyle Busch, it's been a rough season. It's been a rough couple years for Kyle. So it's good to see him up in 8th. It would have been nice to see him win, but that's a different discussion. Ryan Preece in 9th, and Brad Keselowski, that was my 36 for 36 pick today, in 10th place. Eric Jones 11th, Josh Berry 12th, Tyler Reddick 13th, Daniel Suarez 14th, Chase Elliott 15th, Christopher Bell 16th, AJ Allmendinger 17th, Shane Van Gisbergen 18th, Austin Dillon in 19th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 20th. That rounds out our top 20. And in dead last, all the way down, Alex Bowman. That one really hurt. There were 4 drivers that didn't make the end of the race. That was Todd Gilliland in 33rd, Hunter Nemechek in 34th, Cole Custer in 35th, and Alex Bowman in 36th. So rough race, but overall, it was a fun race to watch. Prime, again, with the excellent coverage, excellent post-race coverage. Total race time clocked in at 2 hours, 48 minutes, 20 seconds. Average speed of the race was 143 miles per hour, with 15 lead changes, 7 cautions for 33 caution laps. Margin of victory was just over a second. So congrats to Denny Hamlin. He's waiting on a child, so there's a lot of pressure, but he was able to pull this win off and set himself up good for the playoffs. So maybe this is Denny's year. Overall, very good race. Glad to be back at Michigan. Next week, we go to the new track on the schedule, Mexico City. So we'll see what goes on there. It's bound to be interesting. All the drivers will have to adapt. The cars will have to adapt. The cars aren't used to running at that elevation, so teams are going to have to make a decision on how to cool their cars properly. So there's a lot of dynamics going into next week's race. Perhaps we do another race review, and hopefully it'll be a little more streamlined than this one was. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.